Hi, good morning. I'm Erika, master degree student, and Dr. Expedito Luna is my master supervisor. I will present to you the descriptive study of pandemic influenza A, H1N1 PDM on time in Brazil 2009 and 2010. I'm very nervous and I have support in here. Influenza is an acute viral infection of the respiratory system with high transmissibility and global distribution. Symptoms are non-specific, with benign and self-limited clinical evolution in the major of the cases. Incubation periods is from 1 to 7 days. The sample collection, like respiratory secretion, should occur from 1 to 3 days until 7 days after the beginning of the symptoms. Influenza viruses frequently undergo change in their surface antigens. This change can occur in antigenic drift that cause annual epidemics of seasonal influenza or in antigenic shift that cause pandemic with socio-economic repercussion. In the 20th century, we have three pandemics caused by influenza virus. They are Spanish flu, Asian flu, and Hong Kong flu. In March 2009, human cases caused by new swine influenza virus was identified in Mexico and USA. In April 2009, World Health Organization declared public health emergency of international concern. In July, Ministry of Health of Brazil recognized and declared the sustained transmission of influenza A virus within the country. The Ministry of Health in Brazil divided here the pandemic in two phases for the best monitoring this. The first phase was the containment phase. It included the epidemiological week 16 to 28 in 2009. In this phase, the cases were attributed to international travel or contact with returning travelers. Sensitivity was the objective of the surveillance system to identify suspected cases, and the measures was to reduce the risk of transmission. Mitigation was the second phase and was contemplated in epidemiological week 29 in 2009 to 32 2010. In this period, we have sustained transmission person to person within the country. The surveillance, the objective of the surveillance was the timely diagnosis and treatment, and to reduce the severity and mortality of the cases. This study is justified by the historical background and lack of published studies, the limited information by person, place, and time, the impact of the morbid mortality caused by pandemic influenza virus as a social problem and on demand of the health service in Brazil, and the characteristics the history of pandemic influenza A, H1N1 PDM09 in Brazil, focused in the epidemiological description of reported cases and deaths. The objective of the study is describe the pandemic influenza A in Brazil, considering the spatial distribution, temporal, and personal characteristics of the cases. A descriptive study was conducted in the years 2009 and 2010. We used We used the report case in Sinam, that is a reported case database, module influenza pandemic, and in the SIM, that is a mortality database, we select these codes from TES International Classification Disease, influenza, pneumonias, bronchitis, and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. By fever, cough, and dyspnea, and other symptoms. Clinical manifestations may or may not be accompanied by laboratory and radiological changes listed below. Laboratory abnormalities, leukocytosis, leukopenia, or neutrophilia is very unspecific case definition. Case definition of study by influenza is individual study by influenza virus confirmed by laboratory, or case of study for which it was not possible to collect or process clinical samples for laboratory diagnosis, and that has been close contact of a laboratory confirmed case or belonging to the same chain of transmission, clinical epidemiological to influenza. The standards for laboratory diagnosis are nasopharyngeal specimens to laboratory diagnosis by real-time polymerase chain reaction technique, blood for blood culture to research microbial agents, and other clinical samples to monitor the clinical evaluation on or for performing different diagnoses. Other analysis was conducted in this study and will present in another scientific form. They are: identify and deleting duplicates for records, epidemiological description of reported cases in Sinam, database linkage, description of cases who developed influenza deaths by new viral subtype during the influenza pandemic. Here we can see the final classification of the reported case of influenza A in Sinam. Here we can see 51% of confirmed cases to influenza and 39% were discarded. Here in this histogram shows the cases notified in the case by onset of symptoms of influenza case reports. In red we can see the confirmed cases, and with green we can see the discarded cases. The area under the arrows show the mitigated phase period that we have sustained transmission in Brazil. Here we can see the epidemiological characteristics of confirmed cases. 56% was female and 3,267 were pregnant. The race color more frequent was white, with 8% of the confirmed cases. The influenza A was more frequent from groups from 10 to 49 years old. But more often in this group. Here you can see the distribution of epidemiological history of confirmed cases. 9.72% was vaccinated against flu vaccine, Less than 1% have contact with birds 10 days before of symptoms onset, and 32.5% have comorbidities like heart disease, lung disease, immunoglobinopathy, renal disease, immunocompromised, smoking, and metabolic disease. Here, I need support again. On the map, we can observe the distribution of incidence by stage of residence of the confirmed cases. The color scales correspond to the categories of incidence, and the light color states, like the Northeast, are of the low incidence. In brown, we can see the state of Paraná with the highest incidence in Brazil. 26,390% samples was processed by RT-PCR, and 79.5% was positive to influenza. Okay. But here we can see in red 3,069 cases was confirmed in Sinam, but have negative RT-PCR result as negative, and 1,139 cases was discarded in Sinam, but our result for RT-PCR was positive. Here we can see in the Venn diagram. In In pink, the cases reported in SINAM, and blue, all deaths in Brazil during 2009 and 2010. The overlap here shows the case reported in SINAM that was found in C. In example, cases reported for influenza who died from any cause in these 2 years in Brazil. After the linkage between SIN and SINAM, we identified 5,973 deaths of reported cases for pandemic influenza. From these, 36% were deaths confirmed for pandemic influenza in SINAM, and between 7.55% were cases of pandemic influenza confirmed by laboratory testing. On the other hand, we have 456 cases closed in SINAM as being occurred for pandemic influenza and found on the scene. 30.5% in SIN of these cases is seen as basic cause Chapter 10, disease of respiratory system of the ICD. We concluded that the pandemic virus A H1N1 epidemic reached all states of Brazil between April 2009 to December 2010. Is the highest incidence in the state of Paraná. Young adults were more affected. A significant proportion of cases had comorbidities identified in the literature as risk for complications. The epidemiological behavior of pandemic influenza in Brazil showed the predominance of clinically mild cases with low case fatality rates. Regarding the quality of secondary data, we observed inconsistency between diagnosis and evolution of intra- and inter-case databases, and it is necessary to consider different sources of information for epidemiological monitor and formulation of surveillance and control. Thank you.